Assalamualaikum, my name is Hashim, and today we'll be answering the question about crowdfunding, if it's actually an alternative microfinance for small enterprises, and if it's true or not, right? Okay, so before we answer that question, we need to establish what exactly microfinance is. So microfinance is actually a source of financial services for small, medium enterprises or businesses which actually lack the options for conventional financing or normal banking facilities, right? And as we know, enterprises or businesses have a lot of financial obligations to fulfill, which comes in many forms. For example, there are expenses, overhead expenses, employees to pay, funding for the project, marketing, staffing, and everything. So, the best way for uh, microfinance in general would be credit. Usually, that is what happens, and the idea is microfinance would be more accessible to smaller enterprises. In fact, the general idea of microfinance actually comes from the idea of ending poverty, or in general world's poverty, because the thing is, it is based on the philosophy that even a small amount of credit can actually help the cycle of poverty. So for example, like a small business in Africa or in rural India, um, they need funds to expand their business. So what would really help is if they can get a funding or uh, capital to grow their business. However, being small and being inaccessible or in a rural place, they don't have the services, or they don't even have the capacity to actually reach such financial resources. So what happens is microfinance is actually this idea or philosophy that we can help such small enterprises and services. So today we are going to answer if is microfinance is an alternative. No, sorry, if crowdfunding is an alternative microfinance for small enterprises. So in general, if you talk about Islamic Islamic businesses or Sharia compliant businesses, there exists capital boost, which originates from Singapore. It's a form of Islamic financing for Sharia compliant businesses such as energy or technology businesses, and primarily the businesses come from Muslim countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia. And then there's also another company called Ethis Crowd. It's a form of crowdfunding, but it's actually more for real estate developments. So maybe not exactly small medium enterprises, but it actually exists. And also, last but not least, in general, I'm sure everyone heard of Kickstarter, which is a global crowdfunding platform and site that actually helps fuel creative projects and businesses to actually either kickstart their businesses or create more and more products, right? So, as we've established, small enterprises are often disadvantaged to the access to funds for business expansion. Um, like I mentioned before, because first and foremost, they lack the funds or assets to grow their business, and even if they actually apply for a loan, they might even be rejected because of their small size and lack of collateral or lack of assets, right? Um, a crowdfunding in Islamic financing, right? Actually, there can be two kind of structures for it. One is a murabaha structure or a mudaraba structure. Um, so these two structures will actually benefit both the investor and, of course, obviously the business that is getting the crowdfunding. Um, so crowdfunding actually offers short-term financing alternatives, and of course they will have perhaps possibly better rates than conventional financing, and also with easier approval, because first and foremost, for crowdfunding the amount might not be as big as if you were to approach a normal financial institution and try to get a $100,000 loan. Maybe a smaller company maybe will only need a $40,000 loan. So upfront, it makes it easier for approval for such a loan, right? So for the benefits of crowdfunding for the the company in question, of course, is there are a lot of it. But on the flip side, right, crowdfunding also offers the public access to like non-profit social-based projects in perhaps less privileged societies all across the world. For example, Capital Boost, this crowdfunding site based in Singapore, like I mentioned before, it gives people who are online opportunity to invest or fund Sharia compliant projects in Malaysia, Indonesia, some as far as India. The thing is, without such a platform, Muslims won't have access to such investments or such opportunities. So I mean, you would say that as much as you're investing in your earthly wealth, you're also investing for akhirah in that sense. So of course, crowdfunding also offers people access to creative projects where otherwise we won't have a platform or an opportunity to invest in, right? So lastly, I will share a little bit about the benefits and also the drawbacks about crowdfunding. So as I've mentioned before, it seems that crowdfunding has a lot of benefits and a lot of positive aspects to it. For example, maybe I can share a little bit more, which is market validation. For example, for crowdfunding, even before you've actually kick-started the project, executed the project, you'd have actually market validation, whereby is your project or your product, is there anyone or are there consumers for it? Do people actually want to buy your products, or will there people who actually will support your product? So there is that foresight even before going in and executing your project. So market validation is actually very useful, because it's almost an insight into whether your business will be successful or not. So tied together with market validation will be actually consumer feedback. So it's similar to market validation, whereby in the process of getting funded through crowdfunding, people will give you feedback on if maybe your project or your product is it good enough? Do they want something better, something slightly different? So again, you can tweak and alter your products or your services or your project or your business to fulfill or to satisfy the needs of such consumers, which will actually ensure the longevity and the success of your business or your product going forward. And of course, obviously, the one of the best benefits of crowdfunding is, of course, the funds itself. As I mentioned, upfront you will get funds to grow your business, to cover overhead costs, expenses, and such. So that is, of course, an obvious benefit of crowdfunding. And of course, a few drawbacks which I will share when it comes to crowdfunding. And one of it is actually there's a lot of work. For example, if you do crowdfunding, there will be a lot of work to fulfill expectations. For example, this project that you promise the public or your investors. So you have yet to do anything upfront. So you get these funds and you have to fulfill all these obligations. That's part of business, but it's actually a lot of work because you have investors upfront already. And secondly, depending on which crowdfunding platform you use, there might be 8 to 12% of costs or returns that you must give your investors upfront after a period of time, maybe after 6 months or after 1 year. So that's really 8 to 12% of your profit upfront. And of course, there's that risk that not all campaigns are successful. You might go on a crowdfunding platform and you realize there's no one crowdfunding your project. But in hindsight, that might be something useful, because then you know that this project or this business might not be something suitable. Yeah. So I think that ends our short sharing session about crowdfunding and if it's alternative microfinance for small enterprises. So is it true? Yes, I do agree that it's a very good alternative for small enterprises. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.